The world around us is changing. The freedoms and liberties we once took for granted are gradually being stripped away in the fight against a global pandemic. In the face of this current crisis, the powers that be are taking advantage of this opportunity to reshape, reform, and in their own words, reset the system. But the Bible forewarns us of a time in which the powers that be will unite and give their power and strength to the beast in order to make war with the Lamb in the person of his followers. We are on the very precipice of that time.
Curfew is now in effect. All unauthorized citizens must stay indoors.
Tensions rise as we enter the 213th week of lockdown.
A grim new reality emerges.
COVID-23 has mutated.
Beginning thermal scan. Thermal scan normal.
A horrifying new development
New
today.
data confirms the virus attacks the brain tissue.
Hey, whoa, I'm immune. I'm immune.
Yes.
Well, a couple of things. Big tech and the government are the same. Big tech is basically a propagandistic kind of a PR agency for deep state, if you will, deep state, police state, shadow government, whatever you want to call it. And by the way, they've been doing predictive programming in the UK for years based upon things like weather and where you are and basically listening to the sound. So the idea, it sounds far-fetched, but remember, whenever you see something right there, this is a precursor. This was written a long time ago. And the people who write these stories are basically writing the laws right now and the technology.
All infected Americans are being forced into quarantine camps.
Sarah. Sarah, what's going on?
Department of Sanitation.
Sarah, talk to me.
I think my neighbor has a fever.
It'll be so much easier if you just open the door. Mrs. Grant, you have visitors.
It sounds far-fetched, but remember, whenever you see something right there, this is a precursor. This was written a long time ago. And the people who write these stories are basically writing the laws right now and the technology.
Beginning thermal scan. 3, 2, 1. Anomaly detected. Armed guards will be arriving in 4 to 6 hours. You must not attempt to leave your home, or you will be shot on sight.
This is my message to you.
I know you're in there.
We've all heard of Davos and the World Economic Forum. That's that gabfest that takes place every January in the beautiful Swiss town of Davos. And you see, the next World Economic Forum isn't just some lovey jet-setters climate gabfest. It's an anti-democratic enterprise designed to destroy your job, steal your prosperity, and rob your kids of a future.
We recognise that the world is changing at an incredible pace. What the World Economic Forum does is bring together leaders from all different backgrounds, from all different walks of life. And that provides a unique space for new ideas and new solutions to flourish.
In a complex, interconnected, fast-moving world cannot be met by one stakeholder group alone. It needs collaborative efforts.
Magic moment.
Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight the real virus, but to shape the system.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again.
What is it that would make it so that history would look at this crisis as the great opportunity for reset?
The Great Reset is a welcome recognition that this human tragedy must be a wake-up call. It is imperative that we reimagine, rebuild, redesign, reinvigorate, and rebalance our world.
That has been the great globalist dream ever since. No borders, no nationalities, just a brotherhood of mankind with no possessions, no religion, no property rights, and just one big happy family slurping together on a Coke. The Prince of Wales, the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations, all determined to redesign and reimagine the entire world, what it means to be human, how money works, how political will can be enforced. The so-called Great Reset, which is deliberately designed to strip away your liberties and your rights using the tools of oppression and the opportunity provided by the COVID pandemic. In a nutshell, this promo is saying that all the very worst things in the world, from the coronavirus to bushfires, to riots, to pollution, to poverty, are somehow linked. Then it is claiming that they can magically disappear, literally at the push of a button. And just like that, everything in the world is made right and pure again. The Great Reset.
A global plan called the Great Reset is underway. Its architect is a global elite that wants to subdue all humanity, imposing coercive measures with which to drastically limit individual freedoms and those of entire populations.
This is John Henry Weston for LifeSite News, bringing you breaking news from Archbishop Vigano. He has sent a new open letter to President Trump. In this letter, Archbishop Vigano warns President Trump of the global reset. The purpose of the Great Reset, he says, is the imposition of a health dictatorship. He adds that the renunciation of private property and adherence to a program of vaccination against COVID-19 and COVID-21 promoted by Bill Gates with the collaboration of the main pharmaceutical groups. He says that beyond the enormous economic interests that motivate the promoters of the Great Reset, the imposition of vaccination will be accompanied by the requirement of a health passport and a digital ID, with the consequent contact tracing of the population of the entire world. He adds that those who do not accept these measures will be confined in detention camps or placed under house arrest, and all their assets will be confiscated. Of course, this sounds too incredible to believe. However, he admits that. He says, Mr. President, I imagine that you are already aware that in some countries, the Great Reset will be activated between the end of this year and the first trimester of 2021.
Common Pass is a platform that lets people safely and securely collect their health information, whether it is a negative COVID test result or eventually a record of a COVID vaccination, manage that information, control it themselves, and then be able to let that information be used to demonstrate that they have had a negative test or they have been vaccinated so they can get on an airplane or travel to another country.
But a digital certificate to show who has recovered or been tested recently, or when we have a vaccine who has of people who've received it. That's his answer on Reddit, Ask Me Anything. They had a little forum.
I'd be a little concerned about that and the tracking of people and so forth, generally, especially going forward over a long period of time.
Where I'm going from and where I'm going to.
Eventually, he downloaded a barcode on his phone that let him hit the road. Anyone traveling more than 100 yards from home in Moscow needs one. Police run spot checks on the streets. Even subway turnstiles won't open unless the rider has already logged the trip. And on the roads, cameras and checkpoints track drivers to make sure they're sticking to the route they filed.
And I'm
Good morning, Anne. Greg Hunt is adamant that as many Australians as possible would need to take the vaccine if one does become available, aiming for a take-up rate of 95% of the population to effectively protect the community.
If the vaccine is very effective and very safe, I would start, by the way, by having people volunteer first. I wouldn't compel them first, but you might get to a point where healthy people, without any risk, considerable risk to themselves, say no, and then if the state decides to compel them, they would win in the Supreme Court of the United States. That's my expert prediction of the front.
Greg Hunt this morning was asked if there could be penalties for anyone who refuses, perhaps limiting welfare payments or travel or even their right to go to a restaurant or sporting event. And he's not ruling anything out.
I'm confident that very, very large numbers of Australians will take it up, but we reserve the right, subject to medical advice, to take steps that might assist.
But I don't believe you have a right to be Typhoid Mary and spread it. Look, if you don't want to take the vaccine, you have an option. You can stay in quarantine. But what you don't have the right to do is circulate in society without being vaccinated if the vaccine is proved to be very safe. Let me put it very clearly. You have no constitutional right to endanger the public and spread a disease, even if you disagree. You have no right not to be vaccinated. You have no right not to wear a mask. You have no right to open up your business.
Wait, can I stop you? No right not to be vaccinated, meaning if they decide you have to be vaccinated, we have to be vaccinated?
Absolutely. And if you refuse to be vaccinated, the state has the power to literally take you to a doctor's office and plunge a needle into your arm.
In my supplemental question yesterday, I asked this government if the people of Ontario should prepare for internment camps. In September, the federal government posted a call for expressions of interest for contractors to supply, provide and manage quarantine isolation camps throughout every province and every territory in Canada. These quarantine isolation camps, however, are not limited to people with COVID, but provide a wide latitude for many people to be detained.
The American left and their media poodles have long held up New Zealand as the model for how to properly deal with a lot of things, including COVID. But anyone who loves freedom should take note, because the Kiwis have a terrifying new response to rising COVID case numbers. They're throwing people into quarantine camps.
If someone refuses in our facilities to be tested, they have to keep staying. So they won't be able to leave after 14 days. They have to stay on for another 14 days. So it's a pretty good incentive. You either get your tests done and make sure you're cleared, or we will keep you in a facility longer. So I think most people will look at that and say, I'll take the test.
Premier, here's the RFP. And in the RFP, it uses clear language to express that these camps can be used for a broad spectrum of people, not limited to travelers. Indeed, it doesn't even mention international travelers. It's just a broad latitude of people.
They're going to take it, and especially when these elites keep telling us that there's opportunities to be had in this crisis. Not quite as crass as Jane Fonda that said, thank God for the COVID crisis, but something near that they can recalibrate American freedoms and manipulate the First Amendment under the...
So your government must be in negotiations and aware of these plans to potentially detain and isolate citizens and residents of our country and our province. So, Speaker, to the Premier, where will these camps be built? How many people will be detained? And for what reasons? For what reasons can people be kept in these isolation camps?
How do the World Economic Forum and the United Nations intend to bring about this utopia of theirs, this great reset they keep promising us? Well, they need national and state governments and other bodies to play along. And one of the key tools they are using is a three-word slogan: Build Back Better.
Hopefully we can just work on what we say, building back better.
So we will be putting forward an ambitious and responsible vision of how to build Canada back better.
And over the next 3 years, there is much work to do. We will build back better from the COVID crisis.
It's with the common sense of the British people that we will succeed, build back better and stronger than ever before.
That's why I've laid out a comprehensive agenda, not just to rebuild our communities, but to build them back, make bold investments in them so we can build back better than before the crisis.
Reset. Anyone who doesn't realize that the Great Reset is the biggest threat to our way of life right now hasn't been paying attention. They take it deadly seriously, the people from the World Economic Forum, and so unfortunately do our political leaders. When you hear the phrase "build back better," and I've heard our Prime Minister use it, I've heard Joe Biden use it. This is the code phrase for the Great Reset of our lives.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change. Building back better means getting support to the most vulnerable while maintaining our momentum on reaching the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs.
Indeed, the so-called experts at the World Economic Forum in 2016 fantasized about what 2030 will look like and came up with what they described as utopias. In what they are boasting will be next year the great reset of all our economies, of all our societies, and of all our personal liberties. And remember, this isn't me putting forward this crazy conspiracy theory. This is them. And I quote, "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing. I have no privacy, and life has never been better," the World Economic Forum's experts predicted.
Their belief is that the old world, the world that you and I suspect most of your viewers really quite liked, is broken. It needs to be changed, whether we like it or not. They're claiming there that we like it. I'm not sure that we do, actually. They're talking about things like they don't want us to own property anymore. We're not going to own anything. It will be provided for us. Well, who does own the property? Who's renting it out to us? Some sort of shadowy elite. This is a takeover by the technocrats.
So this Great Reset they've been talking about for more than a decade, the COVID crisis is forcing their hand. And so now we can expect this to really happen, a new Bretton Woods, a new recalibration of the world's currency grid.
I think they're signaling that we're going to have a new Bretton Woods and a Great Reset, i.e. you hit delete on all their bad debts, the quadrillions and hexatillions of bad debt out there, that gets disappeared, and a new Bretton Woods comes in.
The Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, combined with UN Agenda 2030, as it's now called, is a complete transformation of our societies around the world on lines I would call communist or fascist. I mean, frankly, what's the difference? This is terrifying.
And they're seeing this as perhaps like one of these CBDCs, a central bank digital currency issued perhaps by the IMF or the World Bank, a global SDR. Maybe these are some of the ideas, but I think this is what they're seeing. They're hoping, in the global institutions are hoping that this is just a moment for a great reset.
Oh, definitely.
With numerous central banks conducting policy meetings in the overnight session, especially from the Bank of Japan and the Bank of Canada, they want to wait and see how we go into the next wave of the coronavirus. They've all provided some fiscal, some monetary stimulus measures. But one of the more interesting things that they're starting to discuss is central banks utilizing digital currencies. They believe that it's easier to stimulate certain areas of the economy.
It's actually happening. When you look at the Caribbean islands and the Caribbean central banks and the Bahamas, actually, you have, I believe, 4 or 5 islands which together have decided at central bank level to go with a digital currency. So central bank digital currency is coming alive.
Coronavirus is affecting everything, including one pretty big thing, the environment.
I spoke a couple of weeks ago here about the disturbing trend among many of the world's left-wing elites to increasingly conflate COVID-19 with climate change, with many going so far as to suggest that all the measures applied to the coronavirus, the lockdowns, the destruction of businesses, the suppression of dissent, curfews, strong-arm police tactics, should become the new normal for dealing with climate change. After all, we are currently seeing in Victoria just what it looks like when all the levers at our disposal are being used to enforce the COVID-19 restrictions, which include curfews, lockdowns, enforced mask wearing, shutting down of businesses, making you stay within 5 kilometres of your own home, not visiting the dying rellos, and on and on. Remember, it's not me linking COVID to climate change. It is these lunatics, including Charles and the United Nations and the IMF, who want to replicate the global response to COVID and repurpose it for climate change to enforce zero net emissions.
The Great Reset will radically transform our lives. It will put the entire world on a crash course towards the implementation of the Mark of the Beast, which is Sunday worship enforced by law. As the world adjusts to rolling lockdowns, draconian legislation, and the stripping away of civil liberties, there is a subtle and yet gradual push worldwide for the implementation of Sunday closings, a precursor to Sunday sacredness.
We're facing a long and tough battle against the virus. That's why we're announcing today that businesses will now be closed on Sundays. It will be an opportunity for our workers to get some rest.
It will be declared that men are offending God by the violation of the Sunday Sabbath, that this sin has brought calamities which will not cease until Sunday observance shall be strictly enforced. Those that refuse to go along with this system will be unable to buy or sell and will be accused of causing these calamities. It does not now seem possible, but at that time every man, woman, boy, and girl will have to make a decision whether they will obey God or the dictates of man. We are living in the time of the end. The fast fulfilling signs of the times declare that the coming of Christ is near at hand. The calamities by land and sea, the unsettled state of society, the alarms of war are portentous. They forecast events of the greatest magnitude. The agencies of evil are combining their forces and consolidating. They are strengthening for the last great crisis. Great changes are soon to take place in our world, and the final movements will be rapid ones. For more information on the topics discussed in this video, please visit our website at www.prophesyagain.org.